We know both in principle and in practice that consistency over time is where we get our biggest ROI per unit volume of effort from a process. And we also know that it takes habits to establish that consistency. How do we establish these habits and what makes them stick? The answer, folks, is identity. Who you think that you are as a person. No, I'm not a psychologist, folks. It's outside of my scope to define for you specifically what identity means in that context. What I'm here to talk about is what I believe very strongly identity means in the context of habit forming and consistently adhering to a process in spite of outside influences to the contrary. So I guess we should start there with the concept of process in of itself. Let's take something simple that most of us can wrap our heads around. A reduction in adiposity, losing a few pounds, right? So if that's the end goal, let's triage the problem. We, you, I, the individual in this example, is a little overweight. Now we'll take 3 different approaches to the why in this scenario. Individual 1 wants to lose weight because they are unhappy with how they look. Individual 2 wants to lose weight because they have a particular health condition that losing weight will address. Person 3 wants to lose weight because they have always seen themselves as an athlete, and until this moment, they didn't realize how far they've gotten away from what they perceived as their identity. In the resulting weeks and months following this decision to lose weight, in the first 2 examples, those individuals are very outcome focused. The first wants to look a certain way, the second needs to obtain a particular health marker. In the third example of the athlete, they don't have a particular goal in mind, they just remembered that they shouldn't be that way because to them, that's not what an athlete is. There is no outcome. It's a matter of what I am now. What I'm looking at in the mirror is not who I believe myself to be, and that needs to stop. The difference between outcome-based habits and identity-based habits is the difference between training for a purpose versus moving around to just burn calories. For training to be effective, you need to have a sufficiently high magnitude of stimulus. You need to have a sufficient amount of that stimulus, i.e. volume, and you need to have a frequent enough exposure to that stimulus. Rinse, repeat, and that's what drives adaptation. Habits are much the same way. It's almost like you can learn how to be successful in one thing by being successful in another. Many individuals with outcome-focused habits fail in developing consistency because the outcome, number 1, is a set point in time, which then requires a reevaluation and a reset of the entire process, versus identity-based habits that will continue in perpetuity because they are things that you do as an individual with that identity. Identity is powerful, folks, because it answers the why. It's the start of your triage. It's the GPS in your course of life. So let's bring it back to our original example of the 3 individuals that all need to lose weight. One is an athlete, the other one has a health issue, and then the other one just wants to look a certain way. Let's start with the person that wants to look a certain way. Let's say they have X amount of pounds they want to weigh on a scale, and they associate that with a particular look. That's a fairly common viewpoint. They lose 15 pounds over the course of 12 weeks. The scale says what they want it to say, and then they're happy. And what happens next? We all know this song and dance, folks. It's life happens, a couple crappy meals here, a couple skipped workouts there, and then next thing you know it, the weight's back and we're back at square one. Individual number 2, The person that needs to fix an underlying health condition. Something that's affected by weight. Blood glucose. No, let's do blood pressure. Okay, so they're hypertensive. They're like, let's say 145 over 110. So they lose a bunch of weight. Now they're like 125 over 103. Hooray, blood pressure's in check. But then, there's a work function, couple of drinks here, maybe a cigarette there, couple bad meals here, and then next thing you know, we're hypertensive again. Now let's take the athlete. The athlete, after a couple of years, looks in the mirror and is like, wait a minute, this isn't me. So he just starts going to the gym. Can't do what he used to do, so he does what he can, chips away at it for several weeks, and then starts to gain some of his old capacity back. That kind of creates a positive feedback loop in that the motivation from regaining some lost gains causes him to push a little bit harder. The increase in fitness allows him to recover better from more volume over time. Pretty soon, he's training every day, or at least as much as his schedule allows. You don't have to train every day to be successful, folks. Just some of us like to. And next thing you know it, in some ways, he's even more fit as an athlete now than he was when he was an athlete before he quit. And that positive feedback loop that identity-based habits provides is a very robust barrier to any breaks in your consistency. And again, folks, I'm not a psychologist, but I do believe this to be true because all three of those examples I spoke of before, those are all me. Trying and failing to build habits based off of desired outcomes versus sustaining good habits successfully based off of who I know myself to be now. I don't get sick, I don't get tired, and I'm neither defined by nor a slave to my pain. I'm successful because I know who I am, and knowing who I am determines what I need to do to stay that way. Knowledge is power, folks. Knowledge of self, even more so. Thanks for watching.